Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and life coach Joel Elston here. Today is Thursday, May 31st, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, your first daily dose of happy for the day. And we're glad to have Joel back here, as I always am every week, because Joel's the one I've been doing the podcast with the longest. And we did have that little bit of a hiatus there in 2017 when he had to go off to do some other things. But Joel was one of my first interviews. He was the 12th episode that I did way back in 2012, and then he came on a couple of years later to do the co-hosting with me. And I was really sad in April 2017 when he had to go off and do other things. So I was so glad when he came back. And every week, I just love talking with you, Joel. I think it's just great. So thank you for doing the podcast, and welcome back. Nice to talk to you again.
It's great to talk with you, Walt. It's been a really good week, and I've really, and I say this every week, so I don't want it to lose its value, but I truly look forward to this hour every day. Every Thursday, and I know we do it more than that, and I wish I could listen to shows more, but I love doing this. It's as therapeutic for me as I hope it is for our audience, and while everybody may or may not agree with our views, it's our views. I think people get we're passionate about what we're doing. You and I were doing this when nobody was listening.
That's right.
And I know recently, I think we were doing it for ourselves in the beginning and enjoying it. And now, this has grown into, I think last week we officially had 50,000 listens to the podcast.
Yeah, totally.
And then we've come out with our book, which was number one, and on Amazon in a few categories there. So, if you look at that, and we're the humble beginning. It's just such an amazing process, but not necessarily tooting our own horn, but just I think that everybody's so on board with this message, and I love the energy of the people that I talk to that are listening. Some of the feedback that I've gotten on the book has been great, and the concept of tying this all together is really important. So I think what we do is it started, basically as a therapy session for you and I, using the law of attraction that turned into an amazing progression. But that's how life works, and that's how things sort of manifest when you're doing the right thing.
I think so. I think that's definitely the way it works. And by the way, mentioning the book, we typically average, and it varies throughout the week and even week to week, but we typically average somewhere around 150 to 300 show downloads per day. And usually, the average is like what you'd expect, like 200, 225, something like that. But it bounces around. That's the way this kind of thing work. We have had periods where it got up to like 400 or 500, but usually it just falls back down into that range. Over the last couple days, we're seeing an average well over 500 downloads. So I think we're starting to see some of the impact of the book. People reading the book are checking out the podcast, which is exactly what I was hoping was going to happen. Will that trend continue? I hope so.
Yeah.
It could actually continue in a big, big way. In fact, I wanted to also get the word in right now while I remember it. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast and you're new to us, right on the homepage at loatoday.net are all the instructions for doing that. And the people who subscribe love it. And the way we know they love it is they download an average of 30 to 45 episodes per month. And the feedback we've gotten from people telling us directly what they do, they listen to us as they're driving to work, or they're driving home, or they're doing housework, or they're driving on the tractor in the field, or whatever it is they're doing in their lives. They're putting us on the background like people used to do with the radio back in the day. And they're liking the fact that our show is so positively oriented and has such, really very high vibration stuff. Plus, we're talking about the law of attraction. So, it really does pay off. People are enjoying it. So take the time and subscribe. All the instructions are right there. And we're glad to welcome you to the program.
Well, and this audience is, it's such an audience willing to learn and want to know more. It's so exciting when you have that. To me, that's what sort of drives me in a lot of ways is when people are able to really feel what we're presenting in a great way. So again, I don't want to stay on this too long, but it's an amazing journey that it's great to have a front row seat to.
It is. It's fun. It's exciting. I never really anticipated that this was going to turn into anything. And now that it's turning into something, it exceeds my expectations every single day. So that just makes it even more fun. Which kind of ties into the topic, really, because the topic came actually off of your timeline, as it so often does on Facebook. You found something that you posted. I guess you shared it a quote that says, "At some point, you just have to let go of what you thought should happen and live in what is happening," which is actually a very appropriate quote this week because the book, we were able to give away 564 free copies of the book, which was wonderful. And yet, like you and I were talking about before the show, we reached somewhere around 15,000 people on Facebook and who knows how many thousand on LinkedIn and through Twitter and so forth. And we were saying only 500 downloaded a free book? Really? I mean, it seems so counterintuitive, you know?
Well, and you know, there in marketing strategies, and I certainly am very grateful for the 564 downloads. It did put us in number one category in several areas, but there, you know, it goes back to I have a friend that owns a fast food chain down in Florida, and I was visiting him one day, and I don't eat his food at the place, but it's we're just stopping in to say hello. And one of his employees came up and said, "I need my employee discount." And this guy's exceptionally wealthy. And I said, "Why do you charge these guys for, you're not paying him anything? Why do you charge? Give them a free meal?" And he laughed and he said, "Well," he said, "I did that for a long time." He said, "But when you give something away free," he said, "they don't value as much." He says, I charge them like 30% of the cost, but them paying it, they're putting a value to it. So there's almost a counterintuitive. Free is great.
Yeah, true.
But, you know, but it, you know, when they don't, and I've noticed that in my private practice, when I've done pro bono cases before, they're the ones that don't show up without calling, the ones that are invested in it on some level. So there's all sides of it, but we're not going to do a marketing class today, but it is part of that. You know, when you look forward to something and you see a life that you envisioned, and I know there's been points in my life where, especially when I was having a really difficult time, I never envisioned this being my life. I had an entirely different view of what it was supposed to be. But as I have grown and as I've seen it, I'm so grateful for the life that I have. And when I accepted this is the life I have versus the anticipation or the living in the negative of what I'm lacking because I don't have the life that I thought I should have, it's like, wow, okay, I get it now. This is where I'm at. And that is the law of attraction. So you don't become happy. Happiness is not a destination or a job or a house or a certain amount. That's not happiness. Happiness brings those things to you, but you got to be happy first. You got to understand that this isn't, you know, the concept that I think I'm going to use it something I've never used before, a reference to Bad Company, the rock and roll group from years ago.
Okay.
So let me pull that out of there. They had a song that, you know, basically, and I don't know, this may be the name of it, but the concept is, if you can't be with the one you love the one you're with.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that was Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, but yes.
Okay. So, okay. In my mind, they're Bad Company, but that's a good thing.
Well, they probably thought so too.
They're friends. They've been together, I'm sure, at some point in the concert. So you know, so loving the one you're with is just it's sort of an interpretation of love the life you have. This is the life you have, and whether you're in prison, whether you're, you know, multi-millionaire, or whether you're just barely able to pay the electric bill this week, when you learn to love the life you have, that is the acceptance of where you're at, and growth comes from there. When you're living in the shadow of what your life should have been, the law of attraction is picking up on that and giving you more of that lack feeling. And that's it's such a big thing. I want to give a special hello to one of our listeners, and she reached out to me, and well, I certainly won't go into the details of what we talked about. Her name's Alexis, and she is using the law of attraction in a way that very few people do. She's overcoming amazing things, and she listens to us regularly, and she's a devout practitioner and follower of the law of attraction. And I just am so impressed with how she's doing that. So without, you know, sort of leaving out there, wow, what did she do? But she's using it in a way that's changing her life, and she's accepting the reality as it is and learning to love within that, be within that, and identify when the emotions are out. And she actually mentioned to me, and this is something you and I had about an 8-second discussion right before we went on the air, is with the success of the book that the coaches wrote, I think our next book should be considered as asking the public for their versions of the law, not a coach's version, but the public's version of the law of attraction, how it affected them. I think that would be a wonderful follow-up book.
Well, not only do I agree, but as usual, we're completely on the same wavelength. That's actually what I was talking about yesterday with Wendy on the show, and I am giving a lot of thought to doing exactly that, putting out a call for stories. In fact, I can put out a call right now. I did put a little note at the end of the book that we published just now, and the note says, if you'd like to commit or to send a story in for the next book, send it to stories@loatoday.net. Just send the email, or just go to our website and click on the contact form. Either way, but by all means, send in either a story or even just a story idea. Because I love the idea of publishing a book of stories that just come from average, everyday people applying it in their lives. Because one of the things that we got with the coaches was we had 39 different perspectives on how to look at the law of attraction, how to apply it, how it worked out in their different scenarios in their lives. I can only imagine what happens when you increase that to hundreds and thousands of everyday practitioners sharing their stories. So I'm totally on board. And by the way, first of all, Alexis, thank you for being a listener, because we love the fact that you're a regular listener. And second of all, congratulations on, I don't know what the creative ways are that you've been applying it, but from the way, if Joel says that, I know that creative is actually an understatement. So congratulations on what you're doing and applying it in your life. And if you want to send your story in, by all means, please do, because my intention is not only to publish another book, I actually want to get it to the point, it just depends on how much material I can collect. I want to get it to the point where we're pushing out a book a month with like 30 stories in each book, so that there's a month's worth of stories every month. Almost like a subscription service or something like that.
Well, and one of the things that as we brainstorm on that, the ideas of keep popping up. But right now you have the everyday people. Then you have the concepts of how sort of chicken soup for the soul started breaking it down to a young person's version. How kids have applied it, how people, just different scenarios, and it becomes such an amazing journey. And the bigger this becomes, the more people start to notice it. Then a lot of people, I've had this conversation the last few days too, are they have when you have things that happen that are reinforcing with the law of attraction, the majority of people around you will just sort of dismiss that. Well, that was a coincidence, or
right.
Yeah. But that and again, it's that battle of where you're at, of what everybody else is thinking in the direction that you're looking at versus, no, this is right. I had a doctor friend this last week, and him and I have really radically different views. He's a traditional medical doctor that, it's just, in his mind, there is no God, there is no power, there is no anything other than science and biology. And we've seldom cross over into this. And so the other day we were sitting around a table just talking about a case, and I said something about, this client is living in her trauma, and she's become her trauma. And he said, look, this whole law of attraction thing, it just doesn't work. And I said, well, no, it does. And he goes, no, it doesn't. And we had that. We did it. I said, there's very few things that I will stand on, because I love to debate things. I said, this isn't debatable. It has worked in my life. I've watched it. It has changed my life. It has brought everything. It factually worked in my life. So you cannot tell me that it didn't work in my life. Now, I will draw a line with that. And he backed down really quick. He said, I'll back off. And he said, yeah, you're right. It did work in your life. He said, but then he answered the question. Well, it only worked in your life because you believe it worked in your life. I go, exactly.
Well, I'm glad that he's finally seeing the light. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I told him, I said, welcome to the law of attraction. I'm glad you're on board. And we just moved on to another thing. And that's the thing. What you believe. And that's that acceptance of, I'm living this life that I never intended. And if I would to told my, 15-year-old self, here's how things are going to unfold in your life, I said, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that's going to happen. There's no way that would happen. And then yet here it is. And I'm having a life that I love. I'm able to, as my practice has evolved, I started out, and again, I often have an addiction base to what I'm doing, but it's really evolved as addiction is a piece of this, but it isn't the whole point of this. And I use the law of attraction in every area, and I am finding myself becoming more and more as a law of attraction counselor. It's really sort of the direction that it goes. And I have more and more people reaching out to me specifically for law of attraction stuff, which in the beginning, it was just something, a sort of a modality I applied, and nobody ever called and said, hey, I need some law of attraction help. They said, I have this, and I would apply it. Now I get calls frequently. I need you to help me with the law of attraction concepts. And
Wow.
that's huge to me.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big. Oh, by the way, I'm
Yeah.
sure your friend, the scientist, is not listening to the program. Why would he? If he doesn't really believe in the concept, why would he want to listen? But just on the off chance he is, I want to put out one little point to him. My one little point is this. You're a scientist, and you know as well as we do that in any kind of study that involves human beings, the one thing that scientists always try to eliminate is the placebo effect. And my question to you is this. When are you going to study the placebo effect? That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, and again, he's one of the ones that so many people. It is a placebo effect. I go exactly, and I believe in the power of the placebo effect, and you and I talked about this last show. So, I anytime you see a study that supports it, quickly gets buried because it doesn't meet the narrative of where everybody wants to be on a scientific point of view. It doesn't. You can't tell somebody something's not working. You see a lot of I noticed I saw something the other day about acupuncture. We talked about that last week about acupuncture works when you believe acupuncture works.
Right.
Well, I know a lot of people that are into what always seemed odd to me, but this essential oils and the smells and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I factually know it works for them because they really believe it works for them.
Absolutely.
Fact. And I don't need to debate with them or try to talk them out of their belief. It's counterintuitive to do that. It's you figure out what works for you and apply it. That's the answer here. And you can use the law of attraction to make anything work. Whether it's the tapping method or the acupuncture or a combination of any of this holistic stuff. The holistic stuff is an avenue to allow the placebo effect or allow the brain to make the corrections that it needs. The brain heals. The brain subconscious, your body, it only can respond to what you really believe. And as we always say, and with a disclaimer sort of attached to it, this doesn't mean don't listen to your doctor. It means you can use the law of attraction to work with what your traditional medicine doctor is working with you on to increase the effective nature of what they're doing. That's the same doctor that I had this discussion with has no problem in a whole different environment talking about the attitude of the patient makes a big difference in whether how they recover.
Mm-hmm. It does. It makes a huge difference.
It's like, okay, so you can admit that, or you'll discuss that, but you don't see that as a law of attraction. I see that as a direct law of attraction issue. And
I don't even care, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if they don't want to say that it's law of attraction, I'm okay with that. Here's the thing I want to ask them. You have this huge mountain of data in all these studies, in all ranges of science that involve some form of human beings being part of the studies, and you continuously dismiss placebo effect. And yet placebo effect is producing a major portion of your data. When are you going to pay attention to the data? You guys in science, you're totally into this whole idea of the objective viewpoint. And yet you objectively ignore data. What kind of objectivity is that? How about objectively looking at that data? It's actually there. It's staring you in the face, and you're ignoring it.
Well, I call it the scientific bias. I mean,
it is,
and not in defense of this mindset. When your entire training is taught one direction, you're given a a degree that many consider the highest degree you can obtain. You go to a incredible school, and you're in a world where you really believe you're absolutely solely right in your thought process. It's similar to I equate a lot of doctors to religious fanatics, or somebody that's too far into religion. They cannot discuss anything outside of what they were taught. So anything that goes against what they're saying is absolutely, it just grades on them, and then they get into this. But you see that we as people do that. This isn't just doctors. It a lot of times when something violates what we feel are our truths, there's a defensive mechanism. In a sense, when he said the law of attraction doesn't work, I developed a defensive mechanism. Absolutely, it does, because I represented him, and again, I that's where they're coming from. So I understand the mindset. So it's not my job to sell anybody on this. I want to, for people who are interested, here's how it works for me.
Right.
Here's what's worked in my life.
You're right.
And that's, and that's more the issue for me of here, I can give you, my version of evidence, how it works. And that's sort of almost that it really melds right into our topic today. Accept things as they are. Accept this concept that, yes, we have this life. This is where, it is the 31st of May, 8:21 Eastern time. And here we are right now at this moment. This is your life. So worrying about what should have been, could have been, or you should have done this, or you should have gone to school, or you should have, all that stuff is irrelevant today of what should have happened. Here is today. When you can live with your life today, here it is. Accept it, appreciate it, look for the things you're grateful for, and put a period behind what should have been and start a new chapter today. It sounds so cliche when I say it. I actually wish I would have just said that, but it's such a it sounds like a Robert Frost start to a poem, maybe. But
well, that's a good source. If you're going to mimic somebody, mimic Robert Frost, because he's a very, very good poet. Yeah. So I mean, that's a good steal. Yeah.
Exactly. But so in reality, that's how it works. Though is there's so much energy. I work with this family that I care about a lot. They're a great family. There's a lot of dynamics I relate to this family, through my family. But they're stuck in patterns of behavior that I've recently been working with them, and they fall back into the same role and repeat the same thing. And while they know that what they're doing, they can't stop doing it because breaking patterns is really hard. Versus, in part of my statement, the difference between coaching and traditional therapy is coaching is about today forward. It's not about this. Let's spend the next 14 months discussing what has happened. Not that there's not value in what has happened, but moving forward. Yes. What are we going to do? Period. And that is so impressive when we can accept that and move on. That this is my life. This is where I'm at. We have, this is it. This isn't dress rehearsal. I'm not going to wish my way out of it. I can work my way out of it if I want, but you can't wish your way out of it or say, well, I've lost and I should have done this, so I have no sense of it. It's about, no, here I am today. That's the exciting part. The difference between being a victim of life and becoming a practitioner of life is when you take action and live. Here is today. This is today. I'm accepting my life today. That's what you got.
That's it. That's where it comes from. And by the way, what you have today is directly a result of what you thought about yesterday. So what you're thinking about right now, that's your new tomorrow. If you want a reason why to focus on what's going on today, that's your new tomorrow. That's why you focus on what's going on today. And not to say that you have to be tied to it, like in the sense that reality dictates what happens to you. That's not the point. I mean, because you could easily draw that conclusion, right? That, if you're just focusing on what's going on right now, you're only focusing on what is and what the reality is. And because we keep focusing on that never changes. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about being tied to what's going on in reality. We're talking about, what are you going to do with this reality? What are you going to think about in this reality? Right now, what are you
Right.
going to focus on? What are you going to decide? What choices are you going to make? Because the choices are what make the difference. It's if we continue to
Right.
choose to just look at what is, then we don't get anywhere. But if we change our mind about what it is that we want right now, then we get the whole process started.
And that's so relevant, Walt. That's such a, and to be clear, because it could be misconstrued as you're describing. When I say, look, let's accept the life. It isn't accept and just live in it. I am more focused on not looking at what should have been. The should haves, the could haves, and the would haves create a feeling of lack in today. I missed out on something. It's
Exactly.
when my peer group, when I was in the middle of my addictive behavior, and it was a crazy time. By the time I was 30, in my early 30s, everybody that I'm aware of in my peer group was far ahead of me. I was still 17 in a lot of ways. I didn't have any money. I was basically homeless. I had nothing going for me. I just, there were people that were married with kids in a house, and they've had 5 years in their career, and I'm literally having $5 in my pocket and gambling everything away and living in that horrible addictive downward spiral. So that was my reality. So a lot of my time was spent lamenting on what should have been. How could I be here? I lost everything. I should have been in my dad's insurance company making, $100,000 a year. I should be doing these other things that make my life, that I should be entitled to. And so the more I lived in viewing what I messed up or lacked, the deficit created by all that was lost.
Yeah.
And it all it did was bring the feeling of loss and lack. And so the again, law of attraction is like, yeah, let's just keep doing more of that. That's obviously what he's wanting. That's what he's feeling. Versus, one day accepting it. Here I am. My starting point was ground zero. In fact, negative ground zero. I was way under. I started really negative.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean a mindset, but I was upside down financially, and I started from really a deep hole. And then I started just, working and positive and looking better. And the more I focused on the things that were good, things that were going right, then that brought more. That brought more to me. And that's what it was picking up, accepting where I'm at instead of, it's time to move forward. I was unable to move forward because I could not accept what had happened in the past. Once I accepted, here's the reality of where we're at. I'm going to quit whining about it and move forward. That's when the power comes on. That's when you're able to flip that switch and say, let me tap into this law of attraction theory, because it's working. This is something that is so important. We say it weekly in some form or fashion. The law of attraction is working, regardless of whether you believe it or not. Whether it's at work, it's going, it's firing away. When you tune into the law of attraction, understand how to manipulate it to your advantage, that is such an important thing, and that's how you tap into the power of it, by understanding how to work. Not debating, is the law of attraction real? Of course it's real, but it's what you do with it that matters. And the more you when you accept that, move on, it makes such a big difference.
Oh, yeah. Well, the whole point is to empower ourselves. That's why we even study this stuff. That's why we want to know, what is this law of attraction? How does it work? Because once we know how it works, well, then we know, okay, well, if I can change my thought pattern, I now have the assurance that my change in thought pattern will produce changes in my life. Well, that's pretty empowering. Yes. That's a lot more powerful than you are stuck with whatever some higher power gives you, and if if their whim changes and they get angry, then you're stuck with their anger, and nothing you do is going to make any difference. You're just a sinner, and you're just a lowlife who can't do anything on his own. Well, yeah, there's a real defeatist message right there. That'll just pick you right up.
Yeah, and that's exactly. That is exactly that mindset that so many people get stuck in. And again, having the advantage to witness this firsthand in other people's lives. I mean, it's an amazing, I don't want to act like I'm superior to, because it happened in my life and I was able to witness it. But having from this perspective to be able to sit back and look at all this, this is impressive. When you see the same patterns that keep attracting the same things, but yet people are so stuck in the thing that matters to them that it's not relevant. It's not relevant in what has happened. Here is your life today. 4 years ago, I was talking to a 59-year-old man who, this is when I first went into private practice. He was very, very down. He had lost everything, and then really got screwed out of a business deal. And it cost him everything. And he said, "I'm 59 years old. I just lost almost $1 million. That's everything I had. My house is mortgaged to the hilt, and it's over." And I go, "Well," and again, I said, "Yes, it is." And,
wow.
and he was like, "Wow, I thought you were going to try to lift me up." I go, "No." Yeah, right. I said, "Well, it's not over because it's really over. It's over because you have already decided it was over.
Because you believe it.
And
yes.
Because you believe it." I said, "What we have to do is, on some level, we got to start with accepting, here is my reality today. That this is what's happened. It's not dictated to me. It's just understanding the chain of events led this." And when I say he got screwed out of a bad business, he did. But at the same time, he still made the decision to go all in too. I mean, it wasn't,
sure.
He's not without, not without some responsibility, because his thought actually is what his behavior and thought is what got him there.
Yeah,
exactly. So once he was able to stop worrying and whining about what should have been, could have been, or shouldn't have made that decision, and able to start focusing on something, he had this idea that he was a patent attorney and a tax attorney kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And he, one of the things that at the time is it's evolving. One of the big things, he actually started to develop, when you're doing all this research for when you're an attorney, a lot of it is case history, and the internet has helped that so much. Oh, yeah. How you can go online and search things, and it's really made an attorney's life easier. Well, he actually had one of his problems when he was in practice. He realized that the software he was using to manage his practice, it was cumbersome, and he used an entirely different system to access case law. So he actually started working on this free time. He was very computer savvy, and he actually created a program that runs lawyers' practices that deal in this, that is directly connected with everything from the financial stuff to case law. It's all connected. It all is one simple format. It all puts everything together, the billing, and keeps up. And it took off. He just really got really wealthy in a really short period of time by selling that concept. And really, it helped a lot of people. Then he developed for other attorneys, to sort of customize that. So he has this large market share of software, sort of doctors have medical record kind of practice stuff, right. And they developed that for attorneys. And it's compliant with privacy issues and, secure emails. And he got very into it. Then, and I don't remember which company it was, but some big company then comes and buys him. And so by the time he was, 62 or 63, he went from nothing to, he had 5 times the money he had before he lost it all.
Wow. What a turnaround.
It was, but as he points out, there was no chance of that turnaround until he stopped living in what should have been. He had to start living in what he was. And in that desperate state that he was in, one of the things that I make everyone do at some point is let's look at the current victories. Everybody has current victories. And it's hard to see when life's falling apart, but let's look at what happened. You did lose everything. However, you're fighting this depression that you're in. You've gotten out of bed today. Some days that's all the victory you can look at, but you've gotten out of bed. You're facing the day. Your family's still with you. They're very supportive. We start looking at a list of things, and even though your house is upside down, you are current on your mortgage. You are not behind. yet. That may be something down the road. But right now, let's look at where we're at. Let's look at the and so when you start looking at the victories, one of the things that I try to always do is help people see their victories in the middle of the desperate point.
Very important.
And it is. And that is such an important thing because that's what brings everything about, where we're winning. We build, I try to help people set up small victories early because victory becomes a habit. The law of attraction responds to victory, success. So setting tasks, working with a gentleman right now that's going through a lot of stuff, bad gambling issue. Last week, he had one goal. He was paralyzed by where he's at. He had one goal, and he hung up the phone with me and completed that goal. He called me, and he said, Joel, I did it. It was not near as bad as I thought. He had to make a very difficult phone call. The guy he spoke with was actually very supportive. He said, give me another goal. I said, okay, I'm going to give you 2 goals today. Next day, he accomplished 2 goals. Then in a week, he accomplished more in a week than he has the last 7 months by little victories, and then focus on the victory. He's an entirely different mindset now. I can do this versus, it's such a rough way the other way. I can do this versus the mindset of I'm defeated. It's over. There's no shot.
It's funny, too, because as you're talking about those 2 stories, and they're obviously different stories in the sense that one is like a real spectacular turnaround story, and the other one is more of the little everyday, one little step at a time thing. But they're both valuable stories. I'm thinking those are both the kinds of stories I want to have in the next book. I mean, and I'm saying this to reach out to any listeners. If you have a story, by all means, don't worry about having to write it. I'm not going to ask you to write the story. Most people don't know how to write stories well anyway, so I'm not going to ask you to do that. Just get in touch with me. Tell me about it, because I'll get in touch with you, and we'll have a conversation, and I'll take notes, and then I'll write the story about what happened to you. But boy, both of those kinds of stories would be great to put in the next book, don't you think? I mean, just that kind of story. If it was those stories, actually, that'd be great. But I mean, anybody with similar kinds of stories, that would be great to put in the next book.
Right, and I know people. Everybody that I've worked with that does this is able. I know thousands of people. Whether they realize it or not, they have stories, and the concept of writing a whole book is. Trust me, I've done it. It is not, easy to get your arms around. But writing a 2 or 3 page short story, anybody can do that in a couple hours. Just really focus
if they really want to. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be done in a couple hours. My point is, it's real simple. One of the techniques that when we were and I give you credit, you were the mastermind behind the book. You and I were discussing strategies early as you were doing this, and one of the things that we talked about was you're like, well, how long should I give the everybody to get their stories to me? And you were thinking on the lines of 90 days or 60 days, and I'm like, give them 2 weeks.
I remember that too.
Like, what? Yeah, and you're like, well, that's look. You can always go for it, but create that. A lot of times, people become overwhelmed with a thought. When you put a shorter time, they are forced to do it. Now, I know people took longer than that at times, but it did sort of create that expectation, which most people lived up to in a good way.
Yeah,
and so I just for those that are listening live, or even if you can scroll down, because I post so much to Facebook, it'll be hard to find. But I just posted as we're talking. Talk about something that's synchronistic right now.
Yeah,
is I just read the headlines, but Cornell University had a research project, and it said the headline is psychologist says just do it. As research shows, you will regret if you don't. The concept of our most enduring regrets are the ones that stem from our failure to live up to our ideal selves. That just was live. And that's our topic today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's neuroscience from Neuroscience News and Research. Is again a Cornell University study. So those are important things. And that our topic, I mean, I look at that as a reinforcing thing. As we're doing this, that post pops up on Facebook. Mm-hmm. That's exactly our topic. Here we are, where every day we're facing, there's limitless opportunities, but we're so often drugged down by what has happened, and we look at we pull out the file cabinet of everything that could go wrong, and there's a lot of things that have gone wrong in the past. So I'm going to refer to a similar circumstance in 1979 when this went wrong, and say that applies today. That applies right now because that's the same scenario. So there's no sense in me trying that because that failed in 1979. It's a way of thinking. It's a way it's the opposite. It's using the law of attraction against yourself versus here we are. Let's live with it. This is an exciting time. I love where we're going with this as far as I'm feeling it daily in my life. I know you feel it daily in your life.
Absolutely.
And to vibrate on that level of where you're putting out that energy, that's what you just keep attracting. And the momentum from that is just amazing.
Mm-hmm. It is. And it keeps coming. It's the gift that keeps on giving. By the way, you mentioned something about seeing something on Facebook, and I thought, oh, that's another way to have somebody contact me if they have a story idea. Because all you have to do is go to Facebook, go to facebook.com/LOA Today, and you'll find our LOA Today business page. Just leave me a message there. And there's a real quick way to do it. You don't even have to send an email. So I just wanted to put that out there. Feel free to contact me that way as well. And by the way,
yes,
there were a number of our authors who wrote good articles, good stories. They were good writers. But they weren't the majority. The majority of them, and some of them will actually tell you, they knew they weren't really good at it. And they were a little bit afraid of it and so forth. I did a lot of rewriting, and I like doing that. I'm really good at writing stuff. So I took stories that were not really well put together and turned them into beautiful stories. And the feedback that we got says, yep, that worked. People liked it. They were really attracted to what they were seeing in the different stories. So don't let your ability to tell a story hold you back. Whether it's through contacting me via the email address, stories@loatoday.net, going to the contact page on the website, contacting me through Facebook, whatever, just contact me and tell me what the idea is. Don't worry about writing it. Really, I mean, that's the last thing that I want you to do. I want to know what the story is because I want to put these books together. I just don't have all the content myself. I need other people to provide that content. So I know I'm doing a lot of promos today, but I wanted to take advantage of what you said and remind people, yeah, you can reach out to Facebook to get me too.
Yes, and that is, sadly in a lot of ways, but that has become a lot of people's, way of finding things. Oh, yeah. And the fact that it's such an easy way now to communicate I love the fact I live in the positive of Facebook. I try desperately not to get into. Occasionally, I will have a slip and quickly delete. I get into it's hard sometimes to let some things go, especially when they're blatantly false or whether it's political views or whatever. But I have to accept people are going to have their view, and it's not my battle it's not my battle to fight, and I want to be happy. I want to, and that's not a happy place for me. And it doesn't. If somebody believes something that is inaccurate, or at least my perception is inaccurate, that's their business. It's no big deal. I got to be okay with that, and that's part of growth too. Mm-hmm. It's not just letting go of what should have been or could have been. It's also letting go that not everybody's going to agree with you, or not everybody's going to see your mission or journey the way, that you see it, and be okay with that, because so many people, you see it, they just cannot on any level accept that somebody has a different view than them. And that view is, they clearly it's wrong. And I got to make sure they understand it's wrong. That's where a lot of these arguments happen. I mean, you can't post anything without there being a counter argument or somebody trying to take it to, if you're a Trump supporter, anything's perceived that comes out from Trump that, oh my goodness, you said something negative, or even if you didn't, if it's neutral, they defend him, or if you're a Trump hater, it goes to the other side.
Right.
I mean, it just,
By the
Either
way,
way.
you posted something
So
really
I'm
great about this. I don't remember what it was. It was a few days ago, but you posted how if you end up inadvertently in a conversation with somebody who's kind of starting to fight with you, you'll always end the fight by saying you are awesome. And I thought that was a really
yeah.
brilliant post, because that talk about just
Well,
not buying into the argument at all. Just like, you're awesome. Okay, end of discussion.
Yeah, well, and it works really well, and it sounds like I'm being flippant when I say that, but it is a way that sort of shuts them down,
Oh
and
yeah,
and it's like, okay, I can keep doing this and give my counterpoint, and you're going to give your counterpoint, and neither one of us at the end of the day are going to be any different. None of us.
Louise has a really
You're
great
going to be
little.
you.
She has a great little story. Not a story. It's a scenario that she talks about from when she was a therapist. That if she had a client who was hanging on to stuff that were fight based stuff or conflict or whatever, she would play this game with them. She'd pick up a little throw pillow from the couch in her office there, and she would toss it to the client, and then ask the client to toss it back to her, and she'd catch it, and then she'd toss it to the client, and ask the client to toss it back to her, and then she'd let it fall to the ground. And she'd say, that's how you let go of an argument. You just don't keep playing the game. Because we were playing the game of tossing the pillow back and forth. And the only way that game works is if when you toss the pillow to me, I catch it and throw it back. I refuse to do that. And that ended the game.
Right. And that I love. In fact, I'm may incorporate that one day. I don't have any pillows in my office, but
well, you'll have to get a throw pillow now.
yeah, I have a specific throw pillow. But one of the things that I often refer to, and this you just described, for those that you're familiar, the old psychological model called the drama triangle, where it's also referred to as the Cartman drama triangle. But there's three positions in the drama triangle. It's the victim, the persecutor, and the rescuer. And you can play all three roles in this drama triangle, and they happen in families all the time. I mean, you helping families break drama triangles is a really important role for almost any therapist, whether they realize they're doing it or not. But almost all these drama triangles, you'll see the victim that's always the victim, or sometimes they're the persecutor, then they're the rescuer, and they just keep switching these roles, and they keep changing the roles within the system, and it's almost like they just change, playing a game. And once the only way to effectively stop a drama triangle is one of the people involved in the drama triangle just stop.
Right.
Just like you're saying, don't catch the pillow.
Don't catch the pillow.
Once you stop, once you stop, and once you're able to identify you're in a drama triangle, and then not give the response needed, that is such a huge, huge victory. And it changes. A drama can't take place if everyone's not participating.
That's right.
And that's such a it's such a great tool as we move forward. And I think it's very law of attraction based. Now, he wasn't talking about law of attraction when this guy developed it, but it is law of attraction. It's a mindset that just keeps getting stuck. And that's one of the benefits, as I mentioned before, the concept of coaching versus traditional therapy is about now forward. Traditional therapy is let's go back and forth. Let's circle around. Let's rehash it, redo it. And there's value in that. I'm not trying to minimize traditional therapy, but at some point there is today forward. I have many clients that I am their life coach, and I work in conjunction with the therapist, and we work together. You have from today backwards, I have from today forward. And it's an effective method for some people who need to deal with it that way. But it's not getting stuck in, this has always happened. I'm juggling, and I'm juggling this drama triangle, and I got to stop. And that really goes to the bigger picture of this topic today. The exciting piece of letting go of what you believe should have been, and understand the journey in life is really where life takes place. The destination is really never reached. There's no destination. It's the journey's the point. The journey's what matters, and that's where life happens. Life happens within the journey. One of the things that I noticed is a lot of moms, and I had one lady describe this to me recently. She had her son, her youngest baby, out of 3 kids, just graduated high school, and she described it as, obviously they have involvement with me, so there hasn't been a totally smooth childhood here.
Well,
so I've worked with this family
don't beat
for a
yourself
while.
up. I mean, you deserve better than that.
Well, I mean, usually if they know me, it's like, when people call the first time and I ask the question, how, they say, hey, I'm Joe Smith. I say, hey, Joe, how you doing? And then I'm like, well, you're calling me, so it can't be great. and
Oh, jeez.
it usually gets a good laugh. But back to this, this mom describing, she says, these 3 kids were born and it was chaos. It was total chaos. There's been, police showing up at the house, drug, paraphernalia found in the house, girls sneaking out of the window at 2 a.m, stealing credit, and then there's a lot of positives, a lot of victories, a lot of things happen. And it goes from this frenetic pace to silence. And she said the other day, she said, I was so stuck in waiting to get to a destination. In retrospect, I missed the entire, she didn't miss it entirely, but she said, I was so stuck on getting to the destination of high school graduation, I didn't realize I was missing the point of high school graduation. And all of the chaos, all of the stuff that happened, it has a lot different. But when I always use the analogy of, as many of our listeners know, I adopted 2 children years ago from foster care, and my son Chris is 22 and actually on the upswing in life, doing well, and my son TJ, a few years passed away in an automobile accident when he was 23. And so life had brought me to a point of adopting another child, Justin, who's doing very well and thriving, and he's 12 years old. And as an older dad now, I can truly say, not that I was a bad dad. I believe I've always done best effort for my kids.
Sure.
But I am a better dad because I realize I'm living with the journey now. I'm not getting frustrated with the daily, silliness and the stuff that I used to get lost in or whatever. What really matters here. And one of the mindset benefits of my son passing, and there's never a benefit of my son passing, one of my mindset benefits in being a parent now is the stuff I worried about or fought over, and most of it was insignificant. None of it matters now.
Right.
TJ was my wild child. Lord, Walt, I mean, it was hilarious. Now, in retrospect, it was hilarious. When in the middle of it, it's like, what is happening? But when you get to see it from the other side, so being a parent now, I'm loving the journey. I'm living in the journey. Our Justin's elementary school teacher sent a review home yesterday about how the year's been and all that. And everything, I'm like, I'm so grateful for all you've done for my son, and it was wonderful. And one of her questions was, what could we do to improve? And I said, you've done a great job. I'm unaware of anything you could do differently, and let's don't focus on that. What an incredible, this was a teacher that saw the transition from a child being in her class, a 5th grade teacher, who was going to go through an adoption, have his name changed, all that taking place. She handled it with perfection. As there's no class in the Virginia Commonwealth University Education Department doesn't have a class on how do you deal with a child being adopted that's in your class, in 5th grade. It just doesn't come up.
No.
So the fact she was able to handle that in an incredible way, his classmates were incredibly supportive. The journey's what mattered in this. We could have focused on the weirdness of it or the beauty of it. And we focused on the beauty of a new life. Every adoption has 2 sides to it. It is the beginning of a new family, and it's the end of another. When you focus on the beginning of the new, we honor the old, but we focus on where we've been. And my mindset in helping Justin has been, son, we could focus on where you've been or where you're at. And I'll let you decide which one, but trust me, I'll give you a heads up, a spoiler alert, focusing on where you're at right now is a much better way to do it. This is it. Accept life as it is and put a period behind the past and move forward. And that's it isn't about accepting and stopping. It isn't about accepting and surrendering. This is my fate in life. It's about accepting we are starting from where we're starting from. You might be 59 years old and lost everything, and there's still a shot. You might be 70 and lost everything. There's still a shot. It has nothing to do with what's happened. It happens to do with what you believe. Just like my doctor friend said, the law of attraction only works for you, Joel, because you believe it worked. Exactly. He's so right.
Right.
I'm sure he hates me. I'm sure he hates me quoting him being right on law of attraction too. So I need to get that in.
Actually, too, there's an Abraham Hicks phrase that is quite popular within Abraham Hicks circles that kind of summarizes what you're talking about. It says, you can't get it wrong, and you'll never get it done. And that's really what they're talking about. They're talking about the fact that you don't need to get so bent out of shape about what you got wrong, because you can't ever really get it wrong. In fact, I like actually turning it into the positive. They expressed it in form of two negatives. I like to turn it around to everything you do is actually right. The only difference really on the right side is which right do you really want? Where's your preference? And in turning the other one around, you'll never get it done. Well, the other way to say it is the road goes on forever. So you always get it right, and the road goes on forever. That means endless opportunities to do it better and better and better.
Well, and I have used this with I think the last couple of weeks again, talking about Mike Dooley and his analogy of a GPS in the car. You can't use a GPS until you get moving. You can't. Now, when you get moving, even if you're going in the wrong direction, it will correct you and get you where you're going. That's sort of life. You need to be moving. You need to get. There isn't a wrong direction with a GPS. There's just a correctable direction. That's all there is. It's you just need movement. And then as far as the idea that nothing is over. We are a series of events that happen during the journey. And somewhere along the way, again, society has said there's a golden destination out there, and we're going to get there. I have no intent on any destination. I am just immersed in an incredible journey, and that's what I focus on. I have people that have approached me, financial planners and stuff, said, Joel, we really need to get your retirement stuff set up. I said, no need. I'm not retiring. No desire to. Not going to retire. I will die either in the gym or at my office. That's what I'm counting on. In a very positive manner too, in many years from now. But you only can retire. To me, retiring means you're going to take a break from something you're tired of doing. I don't want to do that. I'm never tired of what I'm doing. The journey for me will go on until I quit breathing here. And then in my belief system, I'll just start that next phase of the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because the road really does go on forever. And that to me, you want a comforting thought. There's the most comforting thought of all. If you never actually get it wrong, if you're always getting it right and the road goes on forever, then now all of a sudden, all the limitations are gone. All of those preconceived limitations that we put on ourselves disappear because guess what? None of them matter. None of them matter.
What I got wrong years ago gave me the life I have today. An incredible life.
I'm so glad it did too.
It's such a process to sink in. I know we're running out of time. I just opened that. We could go on forever, Walt. It's amazing that an hour goes by so quickly.
Well, fortunately, we do go on forever. We just do it in 1 hour segments, so we'll have to wait another week for another segment. But that's okay. I can wait. I'm sure you can come back too. You'll come back in a week, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So and we hope you come back too. We want everybody to come back. Come back every single day because we do this 5 days a week, twice a day, plus once on the weekend. Please join us again next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.